Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Judy, are you there?
I'm still here, but our music wasn't.
I know. It took me so off guard. Oh, my God. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
What happened to the rockin' guitars? All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Exactly. Thank you for joining us for our show tonight, How to Attract Your Dream Life Now. And I mean now, starring the master of mindset. That's what I call him anyway, David Baer. I'm broadcasting from New York, and my co-host, Kristen West, who you just heard, is at our beautiful LA Talk Radio studio. Right, Kristen?
Yes, I am.
Just making sure. We've reached way over 1 million downloads since we've hit the airwaves. It's unbelievable. Between latalkradio.com's archives, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and all of our social media, of course, you can find us everywhere. So listen to those replays, and thank you for listening, by the way, if you're joining us tonight or are listening to a replay at the moment. We appreciate your support, and we're taking sponsors for our show for the next few months, so email us for a complete deck through our website, whatwomenwantradio.com. Our sponsor tonight is Jane Bishop, owner of Take the Next Step. She will give you the nudge, the motivation, the kick, or the push, whatever it is you need. I need a push sometimes to take your business and personal leadership to the next level. Jane provides excellent coaching. Now, this is a testimonial from one of her clients, from what I understand. She calls forth the very essence of who you are and who you want to be. She doesn't just let you check off the to-do list to methodically move forward in your business. She really is present and committed to your growth in every single way. She speaks and asserts herself with solid professionalism. I can attest to that, accompanied by a healthy dose of humor and sincerity. So contact Jane at janebishoplive.com or 404-432-2701. Kristen, what percentage of people do you think are living their dream life, their actual dream life, the one that they sat back as a younger kid or maybe just a, version of themselves, a younger version of themselves and said, "Ooh, I want to be this one day"?
I think the optimistic number for that is probably less than 10%. I think the realistic number is probably 1% or less.
Yeah, for sure, right? Living our dream life. The thing that confuses me is that my dream, changes here and there. So I'm sure a lot of people try to get to that dream life, and then maybe their passion or their love or their, drive for success in that particular thing, industry, relationship, whatever it is, changes. Then what do you do?
Yeah, it's hard to adapt. And sometimes we live out other people's patterns too, and we don't realize that we're living someone else's pattern because it made us feel good for a time, and then we don't know how to shed it because it was someone else's and we're attached to it, and we feel like we're betraying someone else if we don't do what they taught us to be. And it's a hard lesson and thing to grapple with.
It is, and it has so many different pieces moving all over the place, right, that you have to put together. And I think our expert tonight is going to talk about a little bit of that too. When things fall into line for yourself, how can you, get that to happen sooner, right? Because that's really when it starts happening is when things are just feeling right and you're moving along the right path and everything falls into line. So we're going to bring him on in just a minute. And my background originally comes from high fashion modeling with Ford New York. And after that, a magazine editor, then author with St. Martin's Press, which eventually led me to hosting and reporting regularly for Better TV, City Buzz, and all the TV networks around the country, both regional and national. I'm currently a regular contributor on NBC and Fox, and also currently hosting the show Behind the Gates New York, a luxury real estate show airing on AWE this fall. I'm also the mom of twin teenage girls. I won't go there. And an entrepreneur. I founded the company What Women Want Networking 7 years ago. And we're hosting our second National Women's Conference in Atlanta, by the way, October 19th to the 21st. I'm sure you've heard me talking about it at the Hyatt Regency in Atlanta, Georgia. And our theme is Go Big, because we are not going home. Kristen, let everyone know a little bit about yourself. You have so many things that you do. I don't know how you keep track of them. I sure can't.
It's true.
And
I don't know.
So many successful things, too. It's impressive.
Thank you. I don't know how I keep track of them either. I actually have a lot of help, which is important to being successful, is get the help that you need. But actually,
that's right.
Yes, actually, right after the show today, I'm going to be meeting with award-winning director and editor Armin Nasseri. We are working on what's called the assembly cut of the first episode of the second season of Horror Talk with Kristen West. And so
nice.
We're getting ready to show the world that second season. I'm so excited about that. And this weekend, this Saturday, I will be at the 25th Frame exhibition at the Artist Corner Gallery in Hollywood, right in the heart of Hollywood, steps away from the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Patrick Coutier, who is a world-renowned photographer, is debuting his exhibition there in Hollywood. And it is based on reimaginings of old Hollywood films, particularly films that highlighted Tab Hunter. So I will be doing the red carpet interviews there this weekend. And the Spirit Room is doing really well. The Spirit Room is an official selection at the Silver State Film Festival in Las Vegas. It also just got announced as an official selection at the Glendale International Film Festival, one of my favorites. And on Halloween weekend, I will be going to Fantastic Horror Film Festival in San Diego to also show the Spirit Room there, which is really exciting. It was a fun role for me to do as a vengeful ghost and vengeful redneck ghost. So I'm really excited that film is doing so well. And in the month of September, if you have not checked out Vigo Video app, I am a tour guide for Los Angeles for Vigo Video app. So my exclusive outings in LA you can catch for the month of September on Vigo Video.
Okay, now I'm exhausted. That's awesome. Congratulations. And by the way, what's a redneck ghost?
Well, the character itself, without giving too much of director Adam Ung's screenplay and story away, the character was definitely a ghost in a home in the South, and sort of acts that way a little bit. So I think that's the most I can give away without giving too much of Adam's artistic vision away. But Adam's a very talented director as well.
That's amazing. You're amazing. Thank you so much. And everyone who's listening, if you want to meet Kristen in person before she goes on another red carpet, in between red carpets, actually there's a red carpet at our conference too, or me, or actually David Baer. Now, David is not only a guest on our show tonight, but we are lucky enough to have him keynoting at the What Women Want National Conference in October in Atlanta. And he's also teaching 2 classes. So you really need to join us in Atlanta, okay, in October 19th to the 21st. What Women Want conf.com. We're already filling the room. We currently only have 16 VIP spots left, and we're filling the room with incredible women. It's where personal meets professional development, where mindset meets business. So go to whatwomenwantconf.com and use the code FRIENDSPECIAL for 20% off before we sell out. Now, this is 3 days of fun, learning, new friendships, and so much more. And I can't believe, Kristen, we have women registered from 15 states around the country so far, along with world-class speakers who are flying in from all over the country, including our opening keynote, Amy Newmark, CEO of Chicken Soup for the Soul, Cecilia Lank, she's a CEO of Value Setters, she has 200,000 angel investors in her network. Leslie Jane Seymour, of course, former editor-in-chief of More and Red Book, and oh my gosh, Marie Claire, CEO of Peach, an activewear clothing line. So many successful women to show us how to level up and to really teach us how to, reach our highest potential that we can possibly reach. Now, this is kind of ridiculous because the general admission tickets start at about $225 for 3 full days. So they're going fast. Go to whatwomenwantconf.com before we sell out. And then when we sell out, it's too late, right, Kristen?
That's right. And you don't want to miss this. You really don't.
Did you get your ticket?
Yes. Yes, I did.
My co-host with the most I can't wait to be on stage with you again. Now, I know someone who doesn't want to be too late for all of you listening to reach your dreams and level up to your fullest potentials and figure out what you really want. And that's David Baer. He's a leading expert on mindset and business strategy. He's built one of the fastest growing brands in the business and personal development space. His book, Mind Hack, has been downloaded over 100,000 times. And his event, The Powerful Living Experience, was named a top 3 must-attend event for entrepreneurs by Inc. David helps entrepreneurs, organizations, and individuals achieve higher levels of creativity, inspiration, and intelligence so they can create more powerfully in every area of their businesses and lives. Welcome back to the show, David.
Hey, thanks for having me, Judy. Hey, Kristen.
Hi.
David, thank you for supporting us on so many levels with What Women Want, with the radio show and the event and the conference and everything that you've been doing. So it's you've been on a few times, and the past couple of times we haven't covered your backstory, the story behind David Baer. There's a lot behind your Powerful Living Experience event. It's not like you just started having these events and started teaching and coaching and speaking. There's a David that everyone at some point in their lives can resonate with. Your story, right? And really, I think from what you've said, it starts with your unhappiness when you were younger. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately for far too many of us, it starts with the story of our unhappiness when we were younger. When I look back, I think the turning point was in my early 30s. I grew up in a family where the pattern was to go out to achieve and create success. I learned that, even though it wasn't really true, what I had understood was that if I was successful, then I'd be liked and loved. And it's interesting to see how the 3 kids, I have a younger brother and a younger sister, have all kind of experienced the same upbringing differently. And based on our different experiences, led completely different understandings of life. My brother and I have ended up in a similar place. My brother Michael's now on staff with Dr. Phil. In fact, we were just in LA last week and got to see him shoot an episode. And so we both ended up in the coaching space, but we had very different journeys getting there. And for me, it was, I graduated from high school with top honors. I went to Columbia University. I graduated from Columbia, and I started my first business on the internet right out of college. And I had this, quote unquote, successful entrepreneurial career at a really young age, from like 21 to 33. And I was 33 years old and had raised a couple $1 million from venture capital companies for a new business that I was starting. And I had 25 employees. And I didn't realize it until I realized it, that I had a drinking problem, that I had a drug problem. I had been trying to manage it for a while and just thought, it was kind of normal that I was struggling with these things. And it wasn't normal. And I had one night where I went out, I blacked out for the first time. It scared the hell out of me. And I called my brother, who was in the addiction treatment space, and he said, you need to go get some help. So I started working a 12-step program. And so I'm running this business, this digital marketing company. I start working a 12-step program. I'm going to meetings like 3 or 4 times a week. I start working with a therapist whose specialty was on the addicted brain. So she started explaining to me what was going on with my addiction. I started to understand kind of how thoughts and thinking worked and how the brain worked. And I wasn't an avid reader. I wasn't a very spiritual person, but about a week after I started working with this therapist, I was at Miami International Airport, and I was going to meet and raise money from another round of investors. And I had one of those. Like, have you ever had that moment where you walk into a bookstore and a book decides it's going to develop a relationship with you?
Like it jumps into your arms.
Yeah, like it's winking at you from the bookshelf. So I walk over to this book. It's called Awakening the Buddha Within. And again, like, I knew nothing about Buddhism. And I turned the book to the back cover, and it said 4 things that really resonated with me. It said, life is full of suffering. The suffering is inevitably going to happen to you. there's a way out of the suffering, and the way out of the suffering is the Eightfold Path of Virtue. And what I was reading was the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. So I bought this book. I read it on the airplane, cover to cover, and it created such a context for understanding what was going on in my life with this concept of suffering. And then I became curious. And when you start to ask, you get answers. And I came back from that trip. One of my employees, and I want to stress how odd this is, like Dave's not a reader, Dave's not spiritual. One of my employees leaves a book on my desk with a note. So I thought you might enjoy this. And it's a book called Kingdom Principles by Miles Monroe, where Miles Monroe is talking about the teachings of Jesus. And I started to see the pattern between what I was learning in 12-step recovery and what Buddha was talking about in Buddhism and what Jesus was talking about. And so I became really, really curious. And my addiction over the last 10 years has been understanding everything I can at that intersection of spirituality and psychology and philosophy and science, and how we can realize the promises that the spiritual traditions have been talking about for 3,000 years, and that personal development has been talking about for about 50. And that's what we teach: how to have a powerful living experience, and how to have everything you want in your life.
It's amazing to me hearing your backstory that you were struggling with addictive behavior, and yet you were still running a business, employing people. People were depending on you. How did you keep all of that aligned, even when you were struggling so personally? It's a great question, Kristen. Like, I look backwards and I realize I actually wasn't keeping it together. That I had and still have a very high capacity for production. And so even though I was operating at 50, 60% capacity, no one really noticed from the outside looking in. I mean, people would have said I was irritable. I was a little bit of an asshole. I was a big visionary. I had a lot of ideas. And so a lot of times the people around you can kind of get swept up into that. But ultimately I wasn't able to connect the ideas with execution. And so for a while the business did well. And then as my, alcoholism and my drug addiction progressed, the business wasn't doing so well. And of course at that time I was blaming everything other than myself. And we see that today. I mean, a lot of the really high-level performers that I end up coaching or working with are struggling in some way, shape, or form with addiction. They've just learned to use the pursuit of success and making money and achievement as a distraction from dealing with a lot of the underlying things that need to be resolved. I'm glad that you brought that up, because it sometimes, especially in the spirituality rhetoric and the self-help space and the self-improvement space, we don't really talk about business, and those spirituality and business seem to be kind of divorced from each other, or they can't really intersect. How have you been able to make those two come more into alignment or to intersect better for yourself, knowing what you know now?
I think it's a really great question, and so often we use these terms and these phrases, and we use them in common conversation, but we all mean something different. And oftentimes we use these terms and we don't even know what we mean. So several years ago I stopped and looked at this idea of spirituality for myself. And if you just look at the structure of the word, and I'm a big fan of looking at what words mean and the etymological origination of words and what their roots are. If you just look at the word spirituality, it's the after condition of being in spirit. It's what it is. So then you start to ask this question of so what is it for me to be in spirit or to be inspired? And so what I saw for myself is that, spirituality isn't about how much I meditate or whether or not I go to church or temple. It's a question of moment by moment, am I inspired or am I not inspired?
Right.
Am I living in a beautiful state, or am I in my stress, my anxiety, and my overwhelm? And so entrepreneurship is, in my opinion, one of the greatest opportunities for spiritual growth, because there are so many touch points when you decide you're going to go out and create in your life and create through the vehicle of a business. You've got vendors, you've got employees, you've got cash flow, you've got technology, you've got operations and processes, that there are so many opportunities for you to move out of being inspired. And so I think it's an incredible training ground for developing your spiritual capacity, this thing we call entrepreneurship. And in fact, we may talk a little bit more about it, but to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to be in an inspired state. You have to learn how to be spiritual if you want to be successful. So I see a very, very strong connection between our capacity to create wealth, to create impact, to create joy, to create a business empire. That's not to say that people are not able to do it and not be spiritual. We find a lot of successful people who are not living in their inspiration. It's certainly possible, but it's a lot easier to create what you want if you learn how to live moment by moment spiritually, whatever that is for you.
I really admire your attention to words, because I think in at least postmodernity, we're the, especially my generation, millennials, we are the LOLers and the ROFLers. We don't even speak in words right now. We speak mostly in acronyms. And we don't know where our words come from. And, while you were talking about spirituality, it reminded me of spirit itself is very close to the Latin word for breath. And sometimes I think when we're out of alignment, I don't know about you, Judy, but sometimes do you does your breath get out of
breathing? Yeah.
Yeah, you hold it in, or your
absolutely.
breath gets out of control. Is there something that you do to get yourself back into alignment when maybe things get hectic or crazy or maybe tense, David?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Kristen. So Carol, my fiance, who's also the president of our company, and I have been to India 3 times over the last 4 years to study. In fact, the last time we went was in February. We took about 30 people from one of our coaching programs with us to go study where we study. And we study at a place called Oneness in One World Academy, known as O&O. And so one of my spiritual mentors, Krishnaji, who's the founder of O&O, talks
David,
about 3. Can you hear me?
Out a little bit.
I'm sorry, cutting in and out?
Yeah, just a little bit, David. We can hear you. It was just cutting in and out just a little bit. But you were talking about...
Okay, well, let me know if we continue to have the problem, and I can try to move around in my space here. But you can hear me okay now?
Yes, just a little louder, and I'm going to turn up your mic just a little bit, too.
There
we go.
Yeah, and one of the things that Krishnaji teaches is what he calls 3 conscious breaths. And so it's about pausing and reconnecting with your breath, which takes you out of the habituation of the mind, right? Like the automatic patterns of thinking that show up that cause stress and anxiety for us, and to just get you grounded back into the moment. And so that's a great practice that I practice and Carol practices, which is reconnecting with our breath, whether it's in the moment and taking 3 conscious breaths, or whether it's through the practice we develop, each morning in our meditation.
So do you start the day with meditation, or how do you start your day? What's a day in your life like with all of this knowledge and capacity and know-how that you have?
So I'm not your traditional, or I guess what we would imagine the traditional high performer is. I'll work till 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock at night because I enjoy my work and I enjoy working late. I might wake up at 8 o'clock, 8:30. I get up, super excited to have my coffee. But before I do, I commit to doing, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes of meditation, just to observe my mind, to slow things down. Oftentimes I'll do some form of visualization or guided meditation. And in that process, I have gratitude for the things that, I have in my life. I think about the vision of what's next in what I'm creating with Carol and with our community. And then I get up and do some sort of form of, body movement or exercise. I've got a rebounder in my office, so if I've only got 5-10 minutes, I'll jump up and down on the rebounder. I like doing a jog for about 20 minutes on the treadmill just to get my body and my energy moving. And that's my process in the morning. I really try to keep it simple. Most of my attention and energy, Kristen, goes on my moment-to-moment practice. One of the things that Judy and I have talked about several times in various broadcasts, which is noticing when I move emotionally into a suffering state, some form of stress, anxiety, or overwhelm, and then working the practice that we teach around that to move back into a beautiful state of being. Because number one, it feels good. And number two, I try to create as much as I can in my life from a beautiful state of being.
So now you've heard it, everyone, on What Women Want Talk Radio, that even David Bear has his moments.
I have a lot of my moments. I have a moment every hour.
But you have to understand, when people look at you speaking on a stage or even interviewing, on a show like this, they probably think, oh, wow, he's really got it down. I mean, this is, he does this every single day, and I'm sure he never misses. And he probably doesn't, have those states of overwhelm or states of suffering, as you call them, anymore. And this is something that's very real, that everyone has this, and everyone needs to practice, and it needs to be a consistent process, right? Do you ever, when you miss, meditating or maybe, I don't know, you're traveling or something and you don't get to it, does it have an immediate effect on you? Like, do you recognize the fact, oh my gosh, I'm a little more short-tempered today because I didn't meditate or I haven't done it for a few days or anything like that? Do you ever see any kind of side effects from not doing it?
Yeah, certainly I feel more at peace, and I'm better capable of dealing with life when it shows up in ways that I don't expect when I'm using my tools and I'm in my practice.
Me too.
I think the thing that might be different with where I'm at now and where a lot of listeners might be is that if I miss my meditation, I don't make it wrong. If I get angry at someone, I spend very little time afterwards moving into guilt or regret. I'm accepting how I show up, and I'm realizing that I'm a work in progress. So I think the difference between people who are spending most of their time living in what we would call a beautiful state of being, and the vast majority, like I totally agree with the numbers Kristen gave, that, on one side of the spectrum, 90% of people aren't living the life they dream of living, and at the other end of the spectrum, maybe only 1% are. But the difference is that I don't spend any time making myself wrong. And that was a huge shift for me, because we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to respond in a way that we didn't, that we wouldn't respond if we were operating at our best selves. And we're all going to be afraid. But what happens is we start to layer on in the observation of how we're showing up even more judgment, and then judging ourselves for that judgment.
Right.
And so it has this snowball effect where most people are living moment by moment by moment in a low level state of fight or flight all the time.
I'm glad that you brought that
up.
It's
very difficult to create powerfully when you're in that state of being.
I'm glad you brought that up, David, because you've said a few words that resonate with me, that I think I struggle with, and I know other people struggle with, is we do all have certain amounts of guilt. We do have shame and suffering. And I know many of us struggle with forgiving not only other people for what we perceive they've done to us, but we also have a hard time forgiving ourselves. And I'm sure that stifles creativity also in some way, wouldn't it, David? I mean, if you're carrying all of those negative feelings all the time?
Sure. If you go back to what we teach around the two states of being, Kristen, you've got beautiful states of being and you've got suffering states of being. And what we found is you're always in one state of being or the other. Always. You're never in like a beingless state. You're either in a beautiful state or a suffering state. Beautiful state would be joy, curiosity, excitement, calm, peace. And suffering states would be stress, anxiety, overwhelm, jealousy, all the various forms of fear. You're always in one or the other, and you're never in both at the same time.
So there's no mixed state. There's no ambivalent state. It's just
Kristen,
one.
you have to join us at David's conference in March. It's in March, right, David?
In March, March 8th through 10th in Orlando, Florida. No, it's not like you're calm and angry. So,
well, you might be a serial killer if you're calm and angry. I mean,
right? Yeah, you may be. Listen, perhaps there's someone out there who can allow various aspects of their personality to exist simultaneously. Sometimes it may seem that way because on a dime we can move into another state of being. And so, what we also acknowledge is that everything that you want, the creativity, the inspiration, the vitality, the health, the connection, the passion, the intimacy, that's all in a beautiful state of being. That's where your power is. That's when you're having a spiritual moment. It's when you are connected directly to that infinite reservoir of intelligence from whence you came. So the name of the game of having a powerful living experience is living as consistently as possible from a beautiful state of being. When you're in shame, when you're beating yourself up, when you feel like you're not good enough, when you feel like you're not as far along as you should be, when you're resentful towards your parents or for what they did or your spouse for what they did, you're in a state of suffering. So you just don't have access to the resource that we've been given as a human being. You've almost moved back into the creative capacity of an animal. You're in fight or flight.
Like you said, Kristen, it stifles creativity.
Stifles everything.
And breathing, everything. So I have a question from Twitter, Lucy Brummett, and she was wondering, how do you go from being in your comfort zone to taking the big leap? So I guess you could be nice and cozy there in your comfort zone in a beautiful state and, content, I guess, satisfied with life. But you want to take that big leap, and it just might throw everything to just all apart. So what do you do, David?
So first, I would suggest to Lucy. Is it Lucy on Twitter?
Lucy Brummett, yeah.
Lucy's not in her comfort zone. She's in her discomfort zone. So when you want to create something and you're not creating something, when you want to take the big leap and you are not taking the big leap, you're not comfortable. And so what we're now starting to negotiate is the discomfort of not taking action with the fear and uncertainty of the unknown. And so what's important to understand for Lucy is that fear of the unknown is normal. That everything she wants is in the unknown. Everything she has is in the known, right? So this is one of the challenges is our dream is in the unknown and the uncertainty. But the technology of the human being, when you begin to move into the unknown, is designed to trigger fear because it's also designed to help you survive. So you know that where you are is safe because by default you're alive, right? You're not happy, but you're alive. So a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the fear somehow means they shouldn't move forward. And what successful people have done is they've, in a sense, at first you just kind of have to throw yourself over the edge. But over time, you'll retrain yourself neurophysiologically to understand that if you've moved into fear as a result of uncertainty, you're moving in the right direction. And that fear over time will become excitement. And I get excited every time I get on stage. I'm nervous. There's a little bit of fear there, but I know that I'm moving into something that's going to be new and exciting for me. So I hope that's clear, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, what's the first step that she should take?
Well, this gets down to what I suggested to you earlier today I wanted to talk about, which is really getting clear on why it's important to you. Because if it's not a must for you, then you're not going to have the motivation or the reason or the rationale to push through the fear. So I'm in the biggest stretch of my life over the last 2 years. I had my first event. I invested $250,000 in doing my first event. I didn't know if anybody was going to show up. 600 people showed up. I've gotten on stages for the first time. I'm getting in front of video and shooting videos. Everybody thinks because I show up with a level of confidence that I don't go through the anxiety or the fear. I go through all of the anxiety and the fear. But what I've gotten clear on is what I teach has the capacity to literally transform someone's life. So I can choose my comfort, or I can choose my fear, or I can choose impacting someone's life. So Lucy's got to get really clear on why whatever it is that's ahead of her is important to her. And we talk about that in terms of a spiritual vision. So what we believe is that the reason why Lucy exists and all of us exist in this reality, the reason why you're even on the planet, is that you are the response to a need. It's why you're here. Life doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't just create things just to create it. So what we believe is that there is some need on the planet right now that is wanting to be fulfilled, and you are here to fulfill on the need. And that the journey of our life is a journey of actually understanding what that need is that we're going to fulfill on. And it oftentimes directly relates to the experiences of our life. So if you look at my mission in the world, it's to end all suffering. Why? Because I suffered tremendously. And so we can see that there was an intelligent design at work. And when you get really, really clear on what your spiritual vision is, like what you see in the world that you want to change, and again, it's normally very personal for you in some way, shape, or form, or you'll become part of an organization that's doing it. When you align with that, then you have it pulls you into it. It pulls you through the fear. It pulls you through the uncertainty. Even when the times are tough, you figure it out. We've had a lot of tough times over the last 2 to 3 years growing this business, but at no point in time did I go, maybe I'll just go back to being an internet marketer. Why? Because it's my spiritual vision. It's the vision I have for why my spirit exists on this planet, and I'm going to go fulfill on it. So Lucy's got to get connected to that, because there's entrepreneurs, there's all kinds of opportunities out there. I mean, you're never at a shortage for opportunities.
Yeah, and I happen to know that she's very creative, and she has a line of greeting cards, and one of them says, "A dreamer starts with the intentions of the heart." And I feel like that's speaking right with what you were saying just now.
Spiritual vision. Exactly to the spiritual vision. And so, I think it's helpful for Lucy to get clear on, well, what is it going to look like if I don't move forward? Why am I not moving forward? To get an inquiry around it. There's a million different answers as to what might be holding Lucy back from moving forward.
She says it's right? It sounds like she says he's right, and I think for many creatives, it is that fear of failure, even though we know we should dive in.
But the irony is the only way you can fail is by not moving forward. So it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. The fear of failure is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if Lucy went out and tried, but didn't produce the results that she wanted to produce, but produced some results, and it led her down a different journey, as long as she kept trying and trying and trying, she'd create something extraordinary in her life. I don't know anybody that got to the end of their life that was like, I just kept working through fear, and I kept doing stuff, and I kept trying to create and help people, and nothing ever worked out. Like, that's not the story you hear. The story you hear is, I lived my life in fear and got to the end of my life and had regrets.
It's interesting, and I know that we were talking about this with Randy Levin, creating a legacy, and really living with with an idea of legacy in mind. And sometimes I think we feel like we address the same fears or the same issues over and over and over again, even though we think we've evolved spiritually and think we've evolved as a person. Is that true? Do we really kind of suffer with the same issues over and over again, or are they just taking a different shape?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a complicated question. So I may experience the same fear in a different way. So in a sense, I'm experiencing it that way for the first time. Mm-hmm. I think that as I work through my fears, and as I actually see what the fear really is, one of the things we teach is just, let's take a look at what the thinking is that's causing the fear, because the only thing causing the fear is your own thinking. Nothing else causing it. So what is it you're thinking? And to start questioning your thinking and looking at the thinking. And this is actually the process of getting to know who you are, right? Which is what all the great thinkers and wise men and women throughout the last 3,000 to 5,000 years, they all said, listen, just focus on knowing thyself. So as I've seen what my fears are, and as I work through my fears, they still show up, because it's the way the technology works. The brain is still going to go, I shouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. But it's like a whisper now. And then again, the same fear may show up in a different form. And the first time I got on stage, I was really, really nervous. There were 25 people. Now when I get in front of 2,500 people, I feel that level of anxiety. At some people, I might be in front of 25,000 people. So, right. It's just the process. But I think what's important is that you understand this is the process. Not that there's something wrong, or there's something wrong with me, or why am I still struggling with the same fears that I struggled with before? Because you're called it's a human being. Like, that's it.
That's a good point that you call it a process, because it's not like you can just flip a switch and be different.
No, you can take time again to look at what's causing you your fear or causing you your stress and causing you your anxiety. And one of the things that we teach is when you truly see what's causing it and you see that it's not real and you see that it's not intelligent, then you can create some pretty rapid transformation. I have someone in one of my programs, we had a call 3 weeks ago, and I actually helped him see how unintelligent the idea was that he's not good enough. And he emailed us yesterday and said, it pops up for me every day, but it just seems so ridiculous now.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Well,
yeah, and think about what possibilities that's opened up for someone like that.
I guess.
Well, when you're dealing with, I would think, that level of crippling inadequacy where you just feel, I'm not good enough, I'm not up for the challenge, you atrophy any sort of intelligence or creative muscle that you would have, just denying yourself that expression. Wouldn't that be kind of a problem, David? I mean, that's kind of one of the things that if you don't use those creative muscles or those new thoughts, that they atrophy, and you have to kind of keep it up.
100%. And you actually used a great word to describe it, Kristen, which is, it is the atrophy of intelligence. Because that's who we are. I mean, we are the individual expression of intelligence itself, infinite intelligence in the world. And so as we don't use our intelligence, as we don't use our spirit, it atrophies over time. And that's just not metaphorical. We can actually see how the dendrites and the neural networks begin to atrophy in the brain. It's like if you're not using the receiver, then the circuits of the receiver begin to go old. And a lot of times we find people who have been working in corporate for 20, 30 years, and their imagination is atrophied. And so we've got to get them reconnected to imagining new possibilities. They've just lived in the same container for so long, and it's a really painful place to be. I was working with a Major League Baseball player, and he had just gotten out of the league. And I asked him what he wanted to do with his life, and he goes, "Well, I don't really know." I said, "All right, well, come up with like 10 to 20 things that would be really exciting for you." And he'd been playing baseball for 18 years. Right. And he came back the following week with a list, and it was like, wake up by 8 a.m., hydrate, meditate. And I was like, man, this is not like a dream list. This is a to-do list. And I said, what do you really want to do? What would really jazz you up? And this is a 42-year-old grown man who just broke down in tears, and he's like, I don't know what I want, and I don't know why I can't figure out what I want. And it's that atrophy.
And I think one of the things is that sometimes our devotion to be a major league ball player in any sport, to be an actor, and even in the corporate world, to be in the corporate world and work with a corporation or work in one line of business for literally decades, you have to have a certain amount of devotion to that. And you have to show up day after day and do that. And I think sometimes people's devotion to their work and to one vision of themselves can really hurt them. I find that astounding that he wouldn't have any other. He was so focused on baseball, there was no other point of reference. It literally defined who he was, that athleticism, and then he just didn't have any other way of looking at himself. Do you find people struggle with that more often than they admit? Yes,
especially people who operate at a level of mastery, like really highly successful people. And that in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem. You'd like to have a little bit more flexibility. You'd like to have a life of variety. This is why even Carol and I are trying to do new things all the time, even though at first it's not that exciting for me to do a dance class or go to a yoga class or, right, like just to continue to add more nuance to our lives. But when it really becomes problematic is when you've developed a level of mastery in a direction that's not aligned with your spiritual vision. Because I'm very masterful and I continue to develop mastery around what I do, but I'm aligned with the full expression of who I believe I'm destined to express myself as in the world. And if you actually look at his history, the whole reason why he got into Major League Baseball was because at 8 years old, his brother was better than him at baseball. And the dad said, "You're never going to be as good as your brother." And at that moment, he thought, "I'll show you."
Right. His switch flipped.
Yeah, that was my next question. What was his motivation?
And even though he achieved what most people aspire to achieve, it was an inauthentic direction. It was born out of a state of suffering. And so that's why we have to be so careful. Like, so many of us entrepreneurs, and I mean, this is a much broader conversation because it's whatever you're trying to create.
Well, we can continue it at the conference, right?
We can continue it. We're going to continue it at the conference. I can't wait.
Or you can give me the answers and we'll have another coaching session, and you can give me all the answers then.
Yeah, but that's why this thing, operating from a beautiful state of being, is so important.
And like you said, it is a process. It's something that you constantly have to work on. And it's just, I feel like, to go into the depths that you need to go to, you really need to make a commitment.
I think that's right. I think that this thing called mindset has become white noise for a lot of people. I think that a lot of people have been let down by personal development. They've read the books, they've gone to the seminars, and there's been some incremental improvement, but they're still struggling. So a decision has to be made that this thing that we're talking about, whatever you want to call it, spirituality, personal growth, accessing higher levels of intelligence, becoming your best self, has to become the most important thing for you in your life. And as entrepreneurs, what happens instead is, because we haven't been able to produce the results out of personal development that I think we all want, we start focusing on strategies, and we become addicted to finding the right strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people are lusting after that magic bullet or that right strategy, and they're not trusting the process. And they're not necessarily, just because you have a degree, you have a master's, you have a PhD, whatever degree you have, yes, you have intelligence, you have a body of knowledge. You had to have intelligence to get all of that knowledge. But it's the way that you use it and you apply it throughout the rest of your life that's important. And, David, I can't wait for you to speak at the conference and really reacquaint us with the various ways that we use our intelligence. And I wanted to ask you, how do we keep up with you between now and the conference? Tell us about your website and your social media, because I know that after hearing this broadcast, so many of the women attending our conference are really going to want to take a deep dive with you and learn what you have to offer.
Sure. So my website is my name. So it's David Bayer, BAYER.com. And on the homepage, we have a free download of my Mind Hack book. And so that is a great way to start getting acclimated to this next level conversation around personal development and personal evolution. And we do an event once a year. It's coming up in March 8th through 10th in Orlando, Florida. And it's called the Powerful Living Experience. And you can find out about the event at powerfullivingexperience.com. And then I'm super stoked to be coming back to What Women Want. This is going to be an amazing event. We've got about a dozen women from our community who are going to converge with me on Atlanta to rock it out with both of you next month. And I have to say that I spoke at about 20 events last year, and the women at your event were the most extraordinary group of women that I've ever spoken in front of, in terms of their commitment to being their best selves and to operating at the highest level in all areas of their life. Like, I cannot wait to be back together with them. And if there is a woman who's listening to this, you got to find a way to get to Atlanta for the event.
Well, thank you. I happen to think that our women are the greatest, but it's nice to hear it from someone else, because they really do have a commitment to, like you said, elevating themselves and improving themselves. And it's just wonderful to see. And I'm just so excited about this year too. And our theme is Go Big, and it just couldn't be more appropriate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Great.
Well, David, thank you for helping us go big, at least with our bigger thoughts and our big, beautiful mindsets. Thank you so much for being on the show. And everyone...
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kristen.
Thank you. And everyone, thank you so much for listening tonight. Join us next week for another great show. And remember, subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't miss one show. Go to whatwomenwantradio.com for more. And see you all next week. Have a great night.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.